Hello, welcome, Yossi, welcome everybody that's joined us and are joining us.
Thank you. Hey, Sam, it's so great to be here. This is really exciting. It's the first time I'm doing something like this, so I'm really very excited about it.
Right, and we're going to be diving into our topic today, talking about uncertainty and talking about org change, restructuring. And you'll see you and I found that we had that in common with quite a few of our clients. So do you want to introduce yourself and say a little bit about where the topic touches you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been having the opportunity to play as a coach since 2012 and coached in many different organizations, really large multinationals, as well as small startups, pretty much around the world. And especially in the last year or so, one of the themes, this theme that we're talking about today, has come up quite often. The organizational changes, the restructurings, the layoffs, the rifts. And as I'm coaching both individual one-on-ones as well as clients, the challenges that we're going to talk about today are really very top of mind.
Absolutely. So hi there, I'm Samantha Ahmet, leadership coach and also mindfulness practitioner. And he's actually quite humble. He spent quite a bit of time at Cisco. And as you may know, that's a really large organization. So I'm sure you'll see experienced multiple times, let's just say, restructuring. I similarly come from a tech space, a company called N4, thousands of employees around the globe. And I actually experienced at least 5 M&As. And it's really hard. Every time we were acquired and, new culture gets merged. And so I'm seeing that also with my clients. I coach clients in 30 different countries. And so Yossi, let's just maybe talk a little bit about more about the definition like I have now. How do you see this uncertainty and restructuring? How do you see it happening today?
So the example I have, I'm working with a large manufacturing company. They manufacture hardware, and they have gone through 2 restructurings in the last year. One of them was more of an internal restructure, and then the latest one came along with a lot of the leadership leaving and changing, and it creates so much uncertainty for the employees. What's going to happen next? Am I going to be touched by this? And when we talk about also internationally, different countries have different rules that some protect the employees in ways that other countries don't. And while nobody wants anybody to be affected by it, when we are in that distress, all of the differences, the way that these messages come down, the different benefits or not benefits that get, all of it just comes and bubbles up into a lot of stress. And so what I'm seeing is that uncertainty, and I'm seeing a feeling of imbalance a lot as well. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to name what you just said there. It's so normal to feel uncomfortable and really uncomfortable in times of restructuring, because it's a systemic issue. So let me give an example. If we take a metaphor of a storm that's going on outside, you can't not be affected. So if you want to out of your home, you still need to gear up. Okay, you're going to be affected by the storm. I mean, if it's raining and there's a wind, so your umbrella is going to fly away. You can't use it that well. And so it's very similar. When you're in the heart of a storm, what can you do? What can you do for yourself? What can you do for your team? And so that's what we're going to be unpacking here together today. Yeah.
Yeah, that part, Sam, is really key. What can you do when you're in the middle of the storm? And I often start talking to people about a model that we talked about the other day. It's the circle of control from Stephen Covey in his book, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's on, the one that we see on the screen right now. And it's not new. People have heard about it and see it. And sometimes I have found, and I was just doing a workshop earlier today with a team, and they were like, this has been so helpful to rethink about where things stand in terms of my responsibilities, in terms of the people that I'm working with, in terms of the work that I'm trying to get done. Where does it sit? Is it something that I can control? Is it something that I can influence? Or is it neither? Is it something that's outside of both of those circles? And the realization that we spend so much time trying to solve for things that are out of my control in some way, but I'm trying to control them, or even trying to make decisions about or deal with issues that are even outside of my circle of influence, really helps people refocus. How have you used this model?
Absolutely. So Stephen Covey is really well known, rest in peace. Such a great leader, has so many good books on trust, and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a must read. So absolutely, I have another model that I use, but before I go there, I just want to check with you. Are you gonna share this model with people that are maybe listening in? Can they write in the comments that they want this model, and you'll be able to send them the screen if anybody wants it?
Sure.
Josie,
Yeah, if people want to put their email, put their names, let them know, and I'll definitely do that in the LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a write-up as well, Sam, that I give to people that I'm working with about how to actually use it to take your roles, your responsibilities, the activities that you do, and how to put them in the circles, because it's not so simple when you start to realize. Let's say the fun one that's common is, I need the IT department to fix my computer, and so that action actually needs to be divided into a couple of different circles. One is, I can contact the IT department, but I can't get them to fix my computer. So I can influence them to fix my computer. But let's say they don't have the part. That's in the circle of concern. And so if I'm getting frustrated about it, am I using my effort effectively? So it goes into how to even break it down to make it really useful, and then prioritize things as well.
Yeah. So maybe what we'll do is hold on, who's ever listening. We'll unpack some of this, because there's a lot of this here. We'll unpack some of this model in a few more minutes. What I want to do is actually introduce Susan, who is managing 400 people. She's in a large consulting company. And what's happened with her, let me just do something here that I can see the screen better. Let me see if I do this. 1 second. Okay. So what she found, Susan, is that she had these managers that were coming into her office. So she would show up 3 times a week, because they had like a partial come back to the office. And what was happening with her is she had 3 top managers that almost on those days that she was in the office, they would be speaking to her. So 2 of them were local. They used to come in her office, and they used to vent for like around 30 minutes around their uncertainty and their fears. And so how this showed up is that I was coaching her, and she didn't even realize that this was happening. But what happened to her was that I put a scenario in the future of how she wants to be, even just shortly into the future. I'm just going to remove this so that I can see you better. And what she saw is that in her scenario in the future, when she looked at her week, she didn't see these 3 managers that she would be spending. Do the calculation, 3 times a week, an hour, plus another one that was another manager who was remote, who was pinging her on Teams. and asking her if she could just chat. And she was like this sounding board, which is fantastic. But the problem was it was draining her of energy. And so the first thing that is in your influence, who you speak to. And so, yes, it is hard to say no to somebody and not always be like open, but you need to watch your energy, because you're going to be affected. Again, we gave the example before, you're in a storm, that's the metaphor. And so everybody is feeling the uncertainty. And so how do you manage your energy?
Yeah, I think it's so critical, that idea of choices that we make, and realizing that just because somebody is calling me doesn't mean that I have to actually have this conversation. And it's really, for me, in addition to this model of the circle of control, is the choices that I make, because everything in that circle that starts off with the word me or my, that's up to me. And even though other people are influencing me as well, anytime I decide to forego or give up my control, then I will probably experience some level of burnout.
Absolutely. Especially if you're in an organization that once a year there's going to be some kind of restructuring. It's hard.
Very
yeah.
hard.
Yeah. So I'm going to...
Yeah, go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's another thing that I think I sometimes forget, and when I was in corporate, is that working in a job is an at-will relationship. And I have a choice, and I make a choice every day that I come back to the environment that I'm in. And the reason I mention it is I find that the more that I can own the things that I do and the choices that I make, the more empowering it is.
Yeah, and I think it's important to name, it's not the best thing to leave, because there's a lot of opportunity also when there is restructuring. And so absolutely, this is your time to level up, because truthfully, things are going to continue to be complex. Things are going to continue to be uncertain, whether there's org change and restructuring or not. Things are tough out there.
Yeah, they really are. And you remind me of a personal story. So the company I was in before Cisco got acquired by Cisco, and many people didn't understand what the connection was between the company I was in and Cisco, and why they wanted our company and what was going to happen. It was a relatively small 5,000 person company, where a lot of the initial employees, the founders, had been there for 20 years. I mean, it was a very almost family-ish, even though 5,000 people kind of place. And all of a sudden we got into this organization that was 77,000 people, and we felt lost. And a lot of the morale just completely fell on the floor. And a lot of, like, it was, my wife would joke, it was like, Chicken Little and the sky is falling. And I think I got lucky because I had her influence and started asking myself the questions that you just mentioned, like, what are the opportunities that this is presenting? Which wasn't how I was, I guess, initially thinking about it, and certainly not how I was being influenced by the surroundings of a lot of the people around me who were also feeling overwhelmed. And that change in mindset alone completely changed my whole career. I went from being engineering to doing large-scale change management and coaching work. And it all ultimately, where I am today, was enabled by that shift, in the acquisition, but also in how I approached it ultimately.
Right. And yeah, I know your story, Yossi, and I have a similar one too, because I'm a type A personality, and I love new things and I love opportunity, but I also suffer from stress and anxiety. And that's why I became a mindfulness practitioner. I meditate. Meditation for me is key. And, sometimes just being able to be with your fear, being able to be with the uncertainty is a gift you give yourself, because when you're with it, you're able to actually also move through it much quicker. You don't get stuck there. But when you fear the fear, that's when you can certainly get stuck. So basically what we're doing is we're managing on one side our challenges, fears, problems, managing our emotions and the difficulties. And on the other side, we want to be able to flex and also hold, the optimism, the opportunity. What can we do? What's in our circle of influence and control, as you mentioned before? So we want to bounce those two sides off. Yeah.
So Sam, when you talk about being with your, I think you said being with your feelings and being with your emotions, how do you do that? Like, can you practically walk me through what you do to be with them? I mean, I hear the words, but I'm curious what that's like.
Yeah. So there are many things I do. I'm just going to pull up a slide here for those people that are actually able to see this. But again, this presentation will be on replay. I do a lot of watching, not only watching my breath. So now as you're listening to us, whatever you're doing, you can just take notice of your breath as you're breathing in and breathing out. And that's already huge in reducing stress. Breathing in and breathing out. You may even breathe in and breathe out through your nostrils, and just notice that the air as you breathe in is warmer than when you breathe out. And so what I love doing when I sit and I pause and I take a mindful pause is watching my thinking, watching my emotions, and then feeling what's going on in my body. And when you start doing this as like a habit, you don't become afraid of it, because you notice patterns that repeat themselves. And when you notice what goes on for you and how you show up, what are themes in your thinking, what emotions arise, how do you experience things in your body, then you actually have so much that you can do to work with what's arising in the moment. So obviously you can get help. I have a free online course that you're welcome to, experience. You can just type one in the comments and I'll send you a link for that. I'm also going to be opening up a live mindfulness-based stress reduction program, you'll see, and in 1 week actually. And this is exactly what teaches you how to meditate, or how to just do a pause where you can check in with your thinking, your emotions and sensations, and not get a fright, but actually see it as that opportunity.
Yeah, I often comment to people that I'm working with. We've been taught our whole lives how to think, but very few of us have been taught how to feel. And I think that it's this mindfulness work that gives us or helps us build that skill set on how to feel. And to add to that, you talk about thoughts, emotions, and sensations. One of the aspects I find almost as a precursor to this is the way we label our feelings. And what I mean by that is sometimes we think of anger, frustration, pain as bad emotions, where joy and happiness are good emotions. And sometimes when we use the word bad and good, we are actually also bringing judgment to bear. And when I feel bad or guilty or unhappy that I'm feeling this emotion, it kind of like is a double down on the pressure of the emotion. So now I feel sad or frustrated, but I also feel guilty or wrong for having these emotions. And so I'm kind of curious how that gets brought into the mindfulness work.
Mm-hmm. So the program that I mentioned, the free program, is there's a lot of journaling in that. So if we bring it into the leadership role, Susan, if she would be journaling, she actually did mindfulness visualization, but if she would have journaled after those meetings with those leaders that she was sitting in on, she would have seen how difficult it is for her. And then she would have actually understood time and time again, this is not the best way for her. She's not conserving her energy because it's bringing her down more. So with, one of the biggest problems that we have is, as you say, we are unconscious of our emotions. So they're there. We all have emotions present at the moment. Like now, you sitting where you are, I'm where I am. And we're all feeling things now, whether we're aware of it or not. And so the thing is, they're in our unconscious. And what could we do with them if we brought the unconscious to the conscious? It's like can be radically transforming. So there are many, many things you can do. Like just saying, no, enough of the fear, and focusing somewhere else, or like just being with the fear and like understanding what's going on. Sometimes, there are many, many ways that you need to work. I know you also work a lot with emotions. Emotions is a big part of life. So again, just normalizing. We're going through uncertainty. There's a restructuring. Maybe my team is not motivated. Maybe let's shift a little bit into that, you'll see, because I know that we've spoken about that. What do you tell people to do if their team's not motivated? They're feeling a bit even down,
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I start off often with the circle of control and influence for the team as well. So I recommend that if they're co-located, they put a big circle, set of circles on a wall somewhere. They take Post-it notes and they write down for each of them what's the different tasks that they have, and then put it in the right circle. So again, as a team, to understand what each of us can influence, what each of us can control, and then what's out of it. If we're in a virtual environment, there's Mural board and Miro and other sorts of virtual whiteboards that work just as well. And I find that really helps, again, that centering. The second model that I love to use is one from Dan Pink in his book Drive. And I don't remember how long ago. He wrote it a while ago. And in that book, he identifies that we have really 4 elements that play a role in engagement, in human engagement. So there's money, then there's mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And what he finds about money is that if we are in a global salary arrangement, so white collar work, then money is only a motivator to the extent that we feel we are being paid fairly. But if we get a bump of 5 or 10% in our salary, it's not life-changing money, and therefore it doesn't have a long-term impact on our engagement. And one of the litmus tests that I use is I ask people, when you get up in the morning, what's the first thing you think about when you comes to work? And every time I ask this question, or I should say, rarely have I heard money. Most times people are telling me they're thinking about their day, what their tasks are, how many emails they have, how many meetings they have. They're thinking about the day to day. And that's where mastery, autonomy, and purpose come in. And as you see on the screen, mastery is the ability to get better at something that matters. So it's skill growth, it's development. Autonomy is having some ability to be self-directed in what you do and how you go about your day. And that is just having that freedom to make choices. And then purpose is really 2 things. One is that I see that the work that I'm doing is being used by others or being used by the company, valued by the company or customers. And the second part of purpose is recognition, that I'm being recognized for the work that I'm doing. So when you think about mastery, autonomy, and purpose vis-a-vis money, money is one of those things that most companies, most bosses don't really have a lot of control over. They get a budget, especially if things are happening and there are restructurings. There's usually less money in the budget for bonuses and raises. But within any given team, mastery, autonomy, and purpose are available for the team leader and the team to use to see how do we mix things up a little bit to get more engaged with each other. And so when you talk about how to help teams focus during restructuring, this is a practice that when I work with leaders on it, they find it very helpful.
Fantastic. So for people coming in, I just want to recall and summarize that we're talking about Dan Pink's model, incredible model here from his book called Drive, and how you can actually drive motivation for your team by giving them more mastery, giving them more autonomy, giving them more purpose. And so I'm going to give an example again of Susan, who, you know, what she came to work one morning and she felt sick to her stomach. What was happening with her is she, you know, this restructuring was just getting to her. It had been going on for a long time. And so she decided, as she got to the building, she was feeling really bad, physically bad. She decided that she's going to call in sick and say she's not feeling well. And then as she's like pacing outside the building, she decides, wait a minute, I'm actually going to try something a little bit different. And so what she did is she went upstairs, she called some of her direct reports together, and they started having a brainstorming session. And then they all broke up and she said, okay, what opportunity, and this is going back to what we were talking before, what opportunity do we have here? And so they took autonomy back in the situation where a lot of people were floundering. They decided they're going to look for projects. They're going to look for potential. And so they came up with a few ideas. And then because everything today is backed by data, they had to back it by data. And then they actually pitched it to the new leadership. Now, what's very interesting is when there's restructuring, you often lose your network because people just disappear like flies, which is also very scary because 1 minute, all your peers, like I have another client, David, all his peers all of a sudden left. And they didn't leave, actually. They were laid off, and they couldn't even tell their teams that they were laid off. But because they're in Europe. So it takes time for everything, as you were speaking about the legality. So there's lots of things happening. But what Susan did, her and her team broke up. They backed up new ideas with data, and then they went and pitched it to the new leadership team. So they gained visibility. They looked at their circle of influence where they can actually be impactful. And so that already brought up motivation, brought up engagement in the team. What can we do? Now, obviously, if you are feeling low and you don't have the energy to even go there, then that's the first thing you need to do. So you need to see, okay, where am I? So let me pause a bit and then maybe I'll come back to the story. You'll see, let me let you come in a little bit.
No problem. It's a great story. I was listening. Very, very interesting. You know, and I think about the what we can do piece, right? I'm going to say something that I often don't necessarily react well to when people say it to me, and I do say it to my clients. And I do find that when I put it into place, it does make a difference. Is making a choice, and it sometimes feels overwhelming to make a choice. To say, I am at a choice here on how I'm responding and reacting. Yes, the situation is the situation, and it's still, I have a choice. I have a choice. How do I want to approach it, and how do I want to look at it? And I think that when I get to those places where I feel overwhelmed and I feel the sky is falling, and somebody reminds me, like you, I have a choice. It's super empowering when I'm willing to accept it. And as I hear your story about what Susan and the team did, it's often that's where I find the difference between, let's say, a manager and a leader is the leader who comes in and says, okay, guys, I know this isn't good. I know that we've got less people and the same amount or even more work to do, and that's overwhelming. But if we were to make a choice about how we want to approach it, how do we want to react to this? What can we do? So I loved your story, Sam.
Yeah, I'm going to give another story because I think the stories really help. It's about Evan. This is a story about choice. Okay, Evan, he's a young team leader. And what happened to him is he's in the fintech space and he was laid off. He was originally at a startup, at another fintech startup, and he was laid off. So when this restructuring came about in his new company, after being there only for 6 months, of course, Evan's fear is going to kick in because he doesn't want to be laid off again. He's a young father. He's got 2 kids. And so even though Evan could have left and looked for a new job, he decided to stay and made his choice because of his responsibility to his family, because he wanted to push through it. He'd only been there 6 months. He didn't want to move again. And so he was working he works now from 7 in the morning to 11 at night. And like, I'm coaching him and he understands that he can, experience burnout, but this is his choice. Because what's happening is they've got a lot of work at the moment, even with the restructuring. There's so much work, there's many projects, and they're understaffed. And so this is where you can, again, show your genius, show your wisdom, do the best you can. And it is a choice to work from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. It may not be the best choice, but it is a choice.
It is a choice. It reminds me, I was talking to another client, Masur, the other day, and he's working for a tough boss who does put a lot of pressure on him and the team to get things done. And we were talking about using communication and finding his voice, and how does he, speak to his boss? How does he share his thoughts, his opinions? And he said to me, I can't really tell my boss how I feel because I'm afraid of getting fired. And I said, let's just take a step back. So your boss is relying on you to get some projects done, right? And he said, yes. And I said, and if you don't get those done the way he wants them, what's your chance of getting fired? He goes, high. I said, but if you don't tell your boss that the things that the expectations that he's putting on you are undoable or unreasonable, then would that not lead to that situation? And he said, yeah, probably. So I said, so you feel that if you speak your voice, you might get fired, but if you don't speak your voice, then you also might get fired. And he stops and he smiles and he goes, yeah, I guess so. And it was just one of those things that sometimes we convince ourselves to do something or not do something because we're afraid of something, but we don't realize that the thing we're afraid of also can very much lead to the outcome that we're afraid of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In Evan's situation, he doesn't have a manager. His manager is gone. And the manager above him doesn't actually care. He can reach out to him, but not for that kind of thing. He doesn't want to hear that, he can decide. I mean, Evan can decide to just, not come into work, or he can decide to, not get the project done. But again, it's his choice. It's his responsibility that he chooses to show up. And yeah.
So how does Evan know that if he's doing a good job if he doesn't have a boss? Like, what's his feedback cycle?
Yeah, so luckily he has me. And so we've been coaching more. Usually I coach sometimes every 2 weeks, but now with him I've been coaching weekly just to have a sounding board. And we've been looking at how he can be resourceful. We can get resources. And so we've been looking at how he can get resources from teams where they don't have projects going at the moment because things have gone, flat. And so he's been working on his influencing skills and reaching out to different divisions, and it's actually been quite good in that respect. And so again, what is in your being influential at work and seeing that you can make an impact it can be very, very rewarding. And so that's what we've been looking at. What you can do, where you can get resources.
Do you talk to him about how to take calculated risks? Because I find that when things are changing and you say that there's opportunity, sometimes people say, but it's a risk to do that.
So with him, it's a little bit different because he's got so much going on. I mean, that's why he's working from 7 to 11, because he has so much work. So it's not really about taking a calculated risk. It's about trying to get as much done as he can together with the team. So he's not working alone. He's managing a team, a small delivery team. And so he has interns. He's bringing in people from, as I say, other divisions. And so he's actually doing really well. With him, it's more about me helping him to manage his emotions, recognizing, the fear, like making space for it, also letting it go.
Again, we come back to this, and I really love this idea about being aware of your fear, because I think that the biggest challenge with fear is when we run away from it. And you mentioned this earlier in the mindfulness, is being able to meet ourselves where we're at. And I think that in the end of the day, we don't give enough focus and credit to our emotional management, whether it's through mindfulness or other techniques that allow us to not be ruled by our emotions, especially the ones that we're not comfortable with.
Yeah, so how I'm seeing this show up is, and how it shows up for many of us is in our sleep, right? So some of us, it takes a bit longer to fall asleep because it may not even be fear. It may be that there's so much actually work going on, or so many problems to solve, or what risks do I take, as you mentioned, like what calculated risks do I take? And so going to sleep can be hard because our minds are just racing. I mean, I have a partner in an organization. One of the reasons he's also coaching with me is not because he suffers from fear or overwhelm. His just mind is always working all the time. And so he finds it hard to be present with his kids, for example, or sometimes even with like his direct report, because his mind is always, like, he's a genius, so his mind's always racing. So if I go back to the sleep, some of us, find it hard to fall asleep. Some of us wake up in the middle of the night and then find it hard to fall back asleep. And then, some of us also wake up really early and don't sleep. So that's how we notice like something's going on for us. And you talked about balance, Yossi, and like feeling it in the body. So mindfulness is often about noticing our thinking, noticing our emotions and what's going on for us in the body. And, when our body's not that relaxed, we're not going to be able to sleep so well.
Right. Yeah. I remember taking the first mindfulness course that I ever took was 2005, I think. And they had us do mindful eating. And they gave us grapes, and they said, okay, eat the grape, close your eyes and bite into the grape, and describe every sensation that you're aware of as you're biting into the grape. And it was such a weird thing to try, but you realize, especially we did it in a group setting, we didn't even have the right words initially to describe the feeling of eating a grape, even though most of us have been eating our, grapes forever. And so I think that people don't understand that the difference between talking about meeting yourself, the deep breathing, and then actually doing it is a different experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. So in MBSR, I'm going to be teaching live next week. we use a raisin. And often when we eat raisins or eat grapes, we just eat one after the other. And so a big part of mindfulness is being present, because when we're present, especially in the body, so eating is a great way to be present, because if we're not talking to anybody, we're not reading like on our phones or listening to something, we can really use eating as a practice just to slow down and be present. And the course that I'm going to be running is 8 weeks long, because you can't just do one thing of mindful eating and say, oh, I've got it, why do I need to do this? Because I remember the first time I actually did the course, which was in around 2005. I did the teacher's training in 2016, but in 2005 we did some mindful walking. I thought, what is this? It's way too slow. I was totally bored, impatient. And those are emotions that come up for me today. I get bored quickly. I get impatient. And so what you do when you practice mindfulness is you're actually meeting yourself. And when we practice these things, and we start today and not tomorrow, it helps us to handle the uncertainty, to handle, change, which is happening all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and I think that now, not only with the restructurings and the organizational changes, but the world is full of so much news, and some of it just is disturbing, and that also, I think, affects our well-being and our sleep, and how we process the information around us. And again, I think that idea of being able to really meet, and when I talk to people about it, I use the word embracing. So if you're feeling an emotion that's not comfortable, I have people close their eyes for a minute. Well, not even a minute, for 5-10 seconds, do some 3 deep breaths, and then I identify the emotion that they're feeling, identify where they're feeling a tightness in their body, and then saying to themselves over and over again, a few times, 3 or 4 times, while they're breathing, I'm okay with feeling this right now. I'm okay with feeling this right now. And that, for me, is one way of meeting your uncomfortable emotions, is not running away or pushing away, but saying to yourself and to the emotion, I'm okay with feeling this right now.
Yeah, and just being also aware of what's going on for your team. So as we're starting to sum up here, the top of our time, let's just summarize a few tips. So we want to be able to manage ourselves and notice what's going for us. So we can manage our thinking, we can notice what's going on in our thinking, we can notice what emotions are present for us, and notice what feelings and sensations we have in the body. And you're already doing a lot of things that are good for you. So you may be running, you may be doing some other kind of sport, you may be journaling. Music is amazing. So look after yourself, emotional and self-management, and then notice what's going on for your team, and create that space for them, that safe space for them, and see where each of them are at, and who can support each other to move through this really difficult, complex time.
Yeah. And again, making those active decisions and bringing your team into that same space of helping them make active decisions, right?
Yeah.
Using models, if they help, like the circle of control and mastery, autonomy, and purpose, so that you bring that along with the mindfulness. And I've seen really powerful changes happen with teams and leaders that take these active steps.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for being with us here today. We'd like to hear what you are doing. Feel free to reach out to Yossi or myself, Samantha, and take advantage of the resources that we want to share with you. And good luck with your restructuring, with navigating uncertainty. And it's been wonderful being with you here today.
Absolutely. And Sam, thank you so much for bringing me on. And I really look forward to your free workshop. That sounds so amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Yossi. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.